Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast once again. This is episode number 266, entitled Why Do People Hack Websites? With Robert Abela. It was published on Thursday the 17th of February 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and some very short housekeeping just before we begin. If you head over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe, we would love to keep you in touch with all of the content that we produce. We've got our YouTube channel, Twitter feed, but also a couple of lists which you can subscribe to, and we will keep you updated when we produce new content. Typically, that is a podcast episode coming out on a Thursday. It's what you're listening to now. And also we have our This Week in WordPress content, which is a live show every Monday. If you'd like to join us for that, you can go to wpbuilds.com/live. That's 2 p.m. UK time, and we're joined by some notable WordPress guests. But we also repurpose that and turn it into a podcast episode, which comes out on Tuesday morning. So once again, if you would like to subscribe, wpbuilds.com/subscribe. I'd also like to point out our deals page. We've got a load of coupon codes for loads and loads of WordPress products. They're there 24/7, 365 days of the year, and it's a bit like Black Friday, but every single day of the year. So wpbuilds.com/deals. And finally, if you fancy a bit of an alternative to Twitter, we've got our Mastodon install. It's wpbuilds.social. Yes, that's a URL, wpbuilds.social, and over there you can join something which feels a bit like Twitter, but is completely federated. It's an open source bit of software which we've downloaded. It's fairly quiet at the moment, but if you want to join in, I'd be most grateful. Okay, let's get into the content of the podcast today. Today I'm chatting with Robert Abela. Robert is a security expert, as you're about to find out, and it's a really interesting episode because today we're not really talking about a particular WordPress product or a particular WordPress theme or plugin, anything like that. We're talking about why do people hack things? What's in it for them? Can you be paid to be an ethical hacker? Why would you do this all in the first place? And what can you do to mitigate things? Where can you go to find out information to keep yourselves protected? Feels like every single week there is a new major security incident on the internet, and lots of them to do with WordPress. So Robert's here to give us a helping hand about how to make your websites more secure and what are the motives of the people who are trying to hack us. Goodness only knows. I hope that you enjoy it. Hello there, welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. Nice for you to be with us. Today I have Robert Abela. Hello, Robert.
Hello, Nathan. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. This is actually the second time Robert has been on the WP Builds podcast. It was a very long time ago. I think prior to actually clicking record, did we decide it was about 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's about 3 or 4 years ago, and we talked about logs mostly.
That's right, because at that time we were talking about WP Security Audit Log, and this time we're just going to have a much more narrative conversation. Very often we do end up talking about particular plugins and themes and so on, and this time we're just talking about security, but in a very general look at security, really just touching on the subject of why people do it and what you need to be mindful of and the concerns, how they're changing over time and so on. Probably in order to do that, Robert, it would be good for everybody to get some kind of understanding as to why you are somebody we should pay attention to when we talk about internet security. So would you mind just giving us a little bit of background about your credentials and what it is that you do and how you're into internet security, specifically around WordPress?
Thanks. Yes, so basically I started when I was 13, 14. I got my first PC. Previously I had an Amiga, but was mostly for gaming. But I had my first PC, I had my first internet connection back with dial-up and modems. And through some group of friends, I've learned a bit about, as I was telling you before, basic hacking, basically. Back then it was done via FTP, SSH and stuff like that, finding default passwords and stuff. Anyway, and I've always shown interest in computers. So my first job after I dropped out from school, I dropped out for a job basically, was as a software tester at a security software company. I was there for 8 years, where I held a different number of roles. I started as a software tester, then I was into R&D, systems engineering, and so I was more always on the technical side. Then I held another 3 jobs over the years. And I always worked with security software companies, and my last 2 jobs were with companies which develop vulnerability scanners on web application security scanner. So basically, yes, I was really exposed in web application security and stuff like that. So, and for the last 6 years now, I've started my own business. Originally, we started kind of like as a security consultant company and cleaning hacked websites as a part-time hobby. But slowly, yes, we developed a number of plugins, and basically we develop. Right now, we are a few years later. We are a team of 6 people full-time, and we develop 6 different plugins, security plugins. One thing I like to point out is, like, many people, when they think of security, people like think of an all-rounder plugin, like where you have a firewall and everything under the umbrella. What we do is we do things a bit differently. We always have a number of plugins which do something very specific, like an activity log plugin or a 2FA plugin, etc. So yeah, now I'm 40 years old, so I've been, technically speaking, I've been like around 20 years working in the security software industry, and the last 10 years of them, it was mostly focused on web application security.
Yeah. So there we go. If anybody knows what they're on about, it would appear that Robert is the person. So you're the man for this conversation. The question that I always want to get an answer to, and I never seem to be able to get an answer, and it's more of a conversation. I'm sure you don't have the answer, but I'm really curious as to why anything like this actually ever happens. And if we think about let's say viruses in the real world, and by that I mean things that can make human beings sick, we don't really have an answer to that either. It's just part of life. People get viruses and they get sick and they get passed to one another, and you can't really blame anybody. It's just nature. But with computers, it's entirely different. There are people to blame. This stuff does not happen by accident, unless I'm very much mistaken. Somebody has to sit down and endeavour to create a problem that the rest of us then suffer from. So I'm just curious, what is the motivation for somebody to begin creating problems for the rest of us? Why on earth are people doing this?
Very good question. And as you said, no one has the answer. But usually, even based on my experience and experience of people I know, it always starts as an adventure for fun. You're a teenager, you get your first PC, your first computer, you get on the internet, and if you show interest, especially in development, and like you like to understand how things work, naturally you like to break things. So you end up. Most probably not even trying to hack, but trying to break things. Maybe you read some files, get some script from the internet, try to run it, etc. Just out of curiosity. So usually that's how it starts. And from once you start diving deep into it, and if you start, for example, I don't know, achieving some targets, I don't know, maybe you break into a website or into a portal and stuff like that. It gives you that natural high, and it's nice. And some people find that interesting. Usually that's how it starts. So it starts out of curiosity. In fact, and it's out of curiosity, and it starts because people are curious and would like to learn more about systems. In fact, most notorious hackers in the world, usually they are very smart people. It's not that they are bad people; it's just their passion. But then, of course, there are 2 ways where you can go. You can go either to white hat hacking, which is kind of like the legal way, where we see like penetration testers. People who provide this as a service, like you're developing a software. We do it ourselves, for example, with our plugins. And you hire someone as a third party to kind of like test the security of your plugins to make sure that the code is secure, etc. Or your website or your network that you're building. That's the white hat avenue kind of thing. And there's the black hat avenue, which is more like the underground scene, where whatever you do, not necessarily whatever you do, but mostly you do it with the intention. It's mostly illegal. Most people don't even realize that sometimes some things may lead to very, very big and grave things. But when you go down the black hat route, the underground route, that's where you go basically. The motivation typically is always money. It's always monetary because of let's say you're still young, or I don't know. I know it's stereotypical, but it's very common. You're always at home. You're experimenting. You break a software, you break something, and and you sell something that you broke, and or some data, and you earn some money. And that, of course, you keep on doing it and doing it and doing it. Most common is monetary, which is data theft. Most people know about data theft. So when people think of hackers, they do it for data theft, to steal. You have an online shop, you have user data. Hackers will steal the credit cards you have on your store, etc. And usually this data is either sold, or you use it to learn more about the customer base. Now the thing is this: since in most cases it's about data theft, and people think of credit cards and stuff, so many people would say, like, listen, I just have, I don't know, a website. My WordPress website is just about a club we have, in the village where we are, about old cars, for example, or stuff like that. So who would want to hack our website? However, yes, the motives usually are much more than that. So yes, many people think that their website, just because they don't have an e-commerce solution or they don't have customer data or stuff, is not a target. However, your website is always a target, and the reason why it's always a target, because as I said, the reason is always monetary, but there are many other kind of like sub reasons why people hack. They hack for vandalism, to deface a website, for example, political reasons, especially during the elections. You see it a lot in every country. Like, for example, someone hacking or defacing it's also called hacktivism. Someone defacing the website of a political opponent, or someone they don't agree with, and stuff like that. There's also corporate espionage. It happens a lot, more than we think, especially with bigger companies. Companies hire other companies to hack for espionage, to learn more about their competition. In fact, a bit of an interesting fact. If let's say you found a vulnerability in Apache, which is one of the most popular web servers in the world. If you find the vulnerability in Apache, you have quite a few different things that you can do. So you can either report it to Apache, disclose it to Apache, they issue a patch, and you issue the report about it, or you can actually sell that. You can actually sell that vulnerability. You can sell the information about that vulnerability, and the biggest buyer of these vulnerabilities usually are governments. Governments buy these vulnerabilities, so they can actually run espionage campaigns against different countries, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. So there's sort of like two branches to this. On the black hat side, your thoughts are that on the whole, the purpose is financial. Now, I'm just sort of curious, if there's an industry on the white hat side, I'm guessing that those kind of careers will command salaries, and those salaries will be dictated by what the market can demand, and you'll work for a company. Probably you might even start your own company, but you'll work and you will achieve whatever salary it is that you can achieve, presumably based upon how long you've been doing it and your level of expertise and so on. But there's always going to be a ceiling on that. But I kind of feel that on the black hat side, potentially the sky is the limit. You really could, with a fair wind and the right set of colleagues and the right things happening in the right order, you could potentially stumble across something where there is an almost limitless payoff, because you've managed to figure out a vulnerability, I don't know, let's say in Apple's iPhone, or as you said, in Apache, or something where the damage that you can cause is so great that you can achieve great financial reward as a result.
Yes, it is. I think we see this also in the physical world. Like, you can get a job, you can be an executive. However, most probably being a drug lord pays better.
Yeah.
And it's the same with black hat hacking. In fact, like, when you look, like, there are, because of the things you can achieve with black hat hacking. For example, as I was mentioning before, like, why are the reasons people hack? People hack even, like, for example, to change a website to promote their own products. People hack to embed links, hidden links for SEO, to help organic search of another website, people hack to redirect the traffic of an online store, for example, to their store or to someone's store, to distribute files, illegal files, distribute malware, or illegal content. And unfortunately, I mean, like not all the companies, of course, but I mean, we know how much legit companies pay for SEO, how many people you employ in your marketing team, to make sure like you are always on the first page on Google, but yeah, you can either go that route, or you can either go to the other route and indirectly kind of like hire black people from the black market, and instead of doing the actual work, which is usually works, the results are the ROI, the return of investment is much quicker, but it's not long term. So you can actually hire companies underground that can hack other websites to embed links in them that point to your website, and yeah, you gain that organic reach basically. So and it seems some people, some companies are willing to pay much more, because of course you need that instant, like for example, let's look at SEO. SEO, everyone tells you that it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. You start writing content, and slowly, if you write good content, slowly you start getting that ranking. But you have to spend, I don't know, let's say if you have a budget, but you have to spend X amount of dollars to do that, and wait at least to start seeing some benefits from it. You need to wait 6, 8, 10 months. It depends how fast you go, but yeah, there's that longevity. However, if you have a budget, I don't know, of $10,000, and you can say, okay, let's hire this underground company. They hack X amount of websites, because most probably they already have a portfolio of hacked websites. And yeah, they inject links there. They embed hidden links in these websites, and yeah, within a week or two, you already have a big number of links pointing to your website. Now, yeah, some people might tell you, yeah, but when you do it legitimately SEO, it's long term. It will work in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. When you do it via the illegal way, when you embed links on hacked websites, it's only working for 4, 5, 6 months, whatever, until Google, finds out and they stop it. It's true, but maybe in those 6 months, and let's not forget that it's us, human nature. It's not me or you, everyone, human nature. We are greedy, So within those 6 months, most probably we would have done much more money than in the 3, 4, 5 years working to achieve the same goal, So it's always, as you said, it always revolves around money. And as long as people or businesses are willing to pay and fuel the underground industry, the underground industry will continue to thrive. And they exist, in fact, because companies, and unfortunately, even in some cases, although it's not clear, it's very even government sometimes, or let's say more official agencies pay them, they will continue to thrive.
I'm sort of curious as to know how anything on a computer could actually ever be worth money. So for example, I can imagine if somebody stole a Bitcoin wallet off a computer, okay, I can get that. There's actual value in having those bits taken from your computer and taken to another computer, and then somebody empties your Bitcoin wallet. I could also imagine that if somebody were to, intercept a banking session or something like that, they could get at your bank account and so on and so forth. But in all of the other cases, the cases where, I don't know, they're implanting things onto your computer or putting something on your server, how does it actually end up getting money in their back pocket? Is it literally that the criminal enterprises, or as you said, in some cases it may be nation states that are promoting this kind of thing? Are they literally paying for these people to sit there almost like it's a job? I mean, are there instances where there are black hat people sitting in offices with computers and, travel expenses and all of this kind of stuff? What's going on?
Yes, there's always value. First of all, when people hack, and that's why I said like every website is a target, because some people say, okay, my website is about some old cars club in my town. Who's interested in that? They might not be interested in your website, but they are interested in the fact that there is an online storage, there is a server that they can control, there's bandwidth, which is expensive, and there's a hub. So, for example, if I wanted to hack a website myself, I'm not going to hack it from my own home computer, okay? And I'm not, most probably I'll go and find a Wi-Fi something, a public Wi-Fi somewhere. I'll hack, I'll use, of course, Tor network or stuff like that. I hack another computer, someone else's computer or someone else's server, and use that as a stepping stone. So I launch the attack from that computer, not from my computer. So you kind of like building layers before you actually attack the target. So so even just the fact that someone has a hacked computer in their control or a hacked server, that's already of value. Maybe not directly there and then, but if someone then pays them, listen, I need an SEO campaign, like to embed some links. You can use that computer to hack another website, or maybe that hacked website that you already have. Maybe you can embed links in that one. So it's not always direct monetary value, but yes, a hacked website or a hacked server or hacked computer can be used either as a stepping stone to hack something else or to hide yourself behind it. Another common reason why servers are hacked, to store and distribute illegal content, like cracked software, recorded movies. Unfortunately, it's very common with child pornography. No one wants to get caught with child pornography in their computer. So what they do, you hack a computer, hack another computer, and then you store files there. And if someone wants those files, you link to that computer. In fact, it's not the first time. If you ever tried to, even for experimentation, if you ever tried to download some sort of an illegal movie or something, typically like 9 out of 10 links you click, apart from being infected with malwares, 9 out of the 10 links that you click on, they don't even work, because most probably it was a hacked website which now has been restored, so that link is no longer working, or that computer has been taken offline, or stuff like that. So yeah, so when they hack, unless if you hack data, which you can sell, like credit card numbers, for example, or customer data, like national insurance numbers and the stuff, social security numbers and the stuff, that has a direct monetary value. You can sell that. But yeah, in most cases, you just have a property to work with. You're just kind of like building your repertoire to work with, either to embed links on them or either to use them as a stepping stone. Very common, for example, for a DDoS attack, for the distributed denial of service. In most cases, the person or the group who's launching the DDoS, they don't have millions of computers themselves. They just hack, and again, going a bit backwards, that's why there is spam and virus and malware. If you had to build, let's say, a network to launch DDoS attacks, you start by sending emails to a long contact list of emails with malwares and stuff, which usually have backdoors or some sort of backdoor which you can control. And whoever clicks on that link runs some executable, etc. So all of a sudden, let's say you sent, 20 million emails. Let's say X percentage of them clicked on them. All of a sudden, you have 500,000 machines under your control. So just at the click of a button, if they installed that malware or that backdoor that you wanted them to install by clicking on that link of they thought it's a bank account or something, or a lottery, or they won the lottery, all of a sudden you have 500,000 computers in your repertoire. So if you want to launch a DDoS attack against someone, just at the click of a button, those computers, if they are switched on, they will launch the attack. And of course, that's how you start building, and usually, especially when it comes to malware and viruses nowadays, it's not just distributing it via email. Most viruses, they just propagate themselves automatically. So if it's on one computer, it automatically transmits itself to all the computers on that network that it can reach and keeps on propagating. So within a few days or a few weeks, you can have a large network of computers. In fact, it is mentioned, we're talking about it before we started recording, and the Lazarus Heist, the BBC podcast, where it talks about these things, like how this whole virus in question grew, how they managed to grow this whole virus and have X amount of computers at their control,
Yeah, I mean, the stories on that podcast, the Lazarus heist, are quite. I will make sure I link to it in the show notes. It is quite an extraordinary, presumably right at the far end of the spectrum of the kind of things that are going on. This is a hack that was just breathtaking in its scale, and it has all the hallmarks of being done by nation states with very deep pockets and a great deal of time and intent. But on the sort of the seesaw, the balance of on the one hand we've got the people who are trying to break things, and on the other side we've got the people who are trying to figure out how they're breaking things. Do you have a sense of like who's winning? It just feels almost like a jousting match. Presumably the white hack people are constantly reacting, not only trying to find fault themselves, trying to find things that are broken and then tell the software vendors about this and that other thing and get it fixed before anybody else finds out about it. But they must also be in a constant cat and mouse game with the black hat people who ingeniously figure something out that nobody had ever seen before. And I just wondered if you had a sense of, if you had to, who's in the lead, who's winning, the good guys or the bad guys?
I agree completely with everything you've said. It is a cat and mouse game, that's for sure. And it seems since the internet started, like the bad guys are winning, and there are a number of reasons why. First of all, there isn't always unless a person is creative, and unless a person, I'm sorry, maybe I used the wrong words, but unless a person likes to break things, you wouldn't find a fault in something. Like for example, I don't know, like if you buy an alarm at your house, and you don't like to just try it. Let me try this. Let me see if it breaks down, whatever. And many people don't do that, which is natural, of course, because you have your life, you have your job, you're busy. Like most people deep down have that curiosity. But nowadays, everyone, you have something to do. Even if you're young, you have to go to school, you have to do this. Everyone has their own errands to run. So if you're not trying to break the system, you will never find issues. And when you are developing a system, I look at it even ourselves. Like we have, as a company, we have security background. We develop security plugins, but we still hire third-party people to check our code. Why? Because first of all, you are seeing your code every day, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this. Even when you write an article, yourself, you can read it 10, 20 times. When someone else reads it, they're going, oh, there's this mistake, because, and you'd be surprised, oh, how come I didn't see that? Even something simple. It's normal. So when you are developing software, it's normal that sometimes you forget about something, or it's just like you're seeing it every day, so it doesn't even click that you should do A, B, or C. Of course, there are the best practices that every developer ideally should follow, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen naturally. So yeah, and most people, when they build software, it's natural. You build the target is the functionality, not how secure it is. Let's achieve the functionality first, and then sometimes, unfortunately, I've seen it happening a lot with any type of software, not just in WordPress, by the way. It happens all over the industry, the software industry. You develop something, then someone finds a vulnerability in your software, and that kind of usually that's a wake-up call, and you start, okay, we should invest a bit more in security, train a bit our developers, maybe hire a third party to analyze our code, check our code, and stuff like that. And you also have so that's one of the main reasons. So it's not, especially if you are a startup. I mean, the last thing you're already struggling, financially, not just financially, in terms of resources, time, and everything. So, and you just want to put the product out there. I'm not saying people neglect things, because they don't, especially in startup. You make sure you pay attention to every detail. But first of all, not everyone is exposed to security, so not everyone knows what is possible to do or not in terms of hacking. So of course, if you cannot imagine what a hacker might do, you're not going to protect against it. In fact, some of the best developers, when it comes especially to security, some of the best penetration testers had hacking experience themselves, not just because they learned pen testing via courses, just because they were even younger, breaking things, and then kind of like they naturally grew into pen testing. So that's one of the biggest problems. But you also have as well, like, hackers in general. If you are paid to do these things, of course, you're going to have more time on your hands to break the thing rather than to build it. So, of course, while you are, as a startup, struggling to build something and focusing mostly on functionality, there's someone who just earned, I don't know, X amount of dollars, and he's comfortably, his job is purely to break down what you are building. So, of course, unfortunately, he might have the leading hand when it comes to security. And also, let's not forget, like, hackers in general, I forgot who it was, but if I'll find it, I'll send it to you. Maybe we can add it in the show notes. There was a TED talk by some researcher, and he was kind of like, he brought up this argument that governments shouldn't put hackers in jail because that's a waste of talent, because actually hackers are very, very smart. Some of them are very, very smart people. We should use them to our advantage, like, to help us, kind of like, case in point, Kevin Mitnick. I don't know if you're from, but he's one of the first most popularized hacker. He was kind of like a black hat hacker. He was arrested, etc., and now he has his own security firm.
Right.
Because these people actually are very smart people, and so if you are very smart, you have enough money or enough resources, let's say, to live. You don't need a job. Then, of course, and you like to break things. While someone is trying to build a product, you are just sitting there waiting for him to build it, so then you can break it. So, of course, because of the dynamics, how things are, you will, unfortunately, the bad guy, or let's put it this way, the person whose task is to find security issues. It seems they will always have the upper hand.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of seems like we've got this new industry developing as well, where on the one hand you've got the black hat hackers who are, everything's underground, and you're in trouble with the law if anything that you've been doing is discovered. And on the flip side, the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got people who are doing white hat hacking, and they're doing it simply for the good of humanity, and as soon as they discover something, they turn it over to the vendor of the software and give them a decent amount of time to fix their software and amend it and patch it up and what have you. And then in the middle somewhere, what I'm going to call grey, I think probably that's the right term, grey hackers, this new industry of people who are hacking in order to sell the exploit to, for example, companies like Zerodium, who, if you can hack an iPhone with no user interaction, my understanding is, you could almost retire off the strength of that. And so we've got this curious grey area where people are trying to figure out in advance what problems there are, and hack things, but they're not necessarily going out and perpetrating mischief themselves. They're just selling it to the highest bidder, and at that point they don't care what those people are doing, and those people presumably have quite a lot of money. And I know that companies like Zerodium go out of their way to explain, well, we only sell our software to this person, and this person, and we definitely don't sell to this government or these people over here. But who knows where it all ends up? It's really bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, especially right now, I'm sure all over the world there's this hot topic, like the COVID, government's trust, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
The question is, like, why would a government need an exploit? Need the environment? Like let's say, yeah, as you said, like, first of all, yeah, if you ever find an issue, a vulnerability which gives you access to an iPhone without user interaction, I'm pretty sure you can retire right away. That's for sure.
Good luck with that, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, if you do, and if the government buys it, why are they buying it? I mean, like, the question is always this. It's not that there's no trust in the government. The question is always this. Like, even this is a common question as well with surveillance. It's like surveillance is good in an ideal world where everyone respects the rules and everyone does what they do. Surveillance is good. However, all you need is one person in that group assigned, for example, to monitor this data, to leak that data, and then it all goes bad, So yeah, I mean, like, yeah, there are companies like who are buying. In a way, you don't blame the hackers, as in, like, if you are, let's say, a grey hat, or even quite frankly white hat, and actually it's grey hat, but you find a vulnerability. Well, you have two options. You either report it to that vendor. Maybe you get, I don't know, a few thousand. It depends, of course, how good the vulnerability is. I mean, like, what its impact can be, once exploited. But let's say you find a good one. You can either report it, let's say, to the vendor, and you get a T-shirt and maybe a few $1,000.
Yeah.
And you sell it, as you said, like to a company like Zerodium, and maybe you get a good amount of money. I think it's a difficult choice. I think it really depends on your position, because in all fairness, if you are broke, and you need money and you found something, then most probably you'll be leaning towards selling it. And as you said, like, even if you sell it to this company, or even if it's not Zerodium, let's say it's an underground company. I don't know, it's an underground market. And I think it's difficult to imagine how this vulnerability you're selling, how bad this can be used, because if you sell it to someone, I think mentally you feel like, okay, that's off my shoulders, responsibility. I sold it. I've done my job. It's someone else's problem, kind of thing. Someone's probably, and unfortunately, it's very normal. Even in the physical world, the black market always pays better than as we were saying before, always pays better than the legitimate market. So I think it's a bit of ethical question, kind of thing. It also depends on your position. Like if you are already comfortable, most probably, and you're typically, I don't know, an ethical person, you like to do the right things, most probably you'll sell it to the right person. But if you're, like a bit broke or stuff like that, most probably you'll be leaning towards selling it to the other part,
I think if you are interested in this, that there is, albeit I think it would take a long time to get there is a career to be had in white hat hacking. And what I mean by that is you can go to these, I mean, I don't know if they've resurrected after COVID, but things like Pwn to Own, where you can show up and they will basically put you in a contest, and in this contest they will give you some hardware and some software, and if you can achieve a certain milestone with, let's say, you can escape the Chrome Sandbox or something like that, you might achieve a certain amount. But if you can, I don't know, get into become root on Mac OS or something like that, you'll obviously achieve a greater amount. And it's quite extraordinary. Some of these teams, and it seems to be teams, not individuals, that go in, and a week later when the conference is over, they come out and they've made millions. It's extraordinary.
Yes, and it's not even if you go, like, there are quite a few conferences like this. For example, even you go to Black Hat, and Black Hat is very normal that you see kind of like what we call the zero-day exploits, where people demonstrate something that's not yet known to the public. A few years ago, there was someone who managed to hack an ATM, and just withdrew any amount of money he wanted to.
Grief.
Yeah, and exactly, yeah, and basically, it is a lucrative market. And however, even though I said, like, we've said before, like, usually the black market pays better than the legitimate market, slowly it seems we are warming up to the idea that, listen, we need to pay these people, like, if we want them to be on the good side and if we want them to help us, we need to pay these people. Like, if the black market is paying them $10, we cannot pay them $2 for them. We have to pay them $10, one might say, but it's not ethical to get $10 and sell it to the bad people. But like, unfortunately, money talks most of the time. So there are definitely a lot of platforms nowadays, a lot of conferences, and a lot of even online sites and online courses and online setups where you can train, and where kind of like slowly, like when I compare what I see today compared to 15, 20 years ago, yes, slowly we are kind of like, there's way more awareness, there are way more platforms and way more opportunities for hackers. By the way, when we say hacker, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Hacker is a hacker. It's just someone who likes to break things, So there are many more opportunities, good opportunities, and we're kind of like paving the way to help them kind of like, okay, stick to the kind of like good side, because listen, they pay as well,
Yeah, so, if you're into all this stuff and you find yourself tinkering and you are sitting in the middle of the seesaw thinking, go left or go right.
Exactly, yeah.
There is increasingly a road to making a career out of it. And I suppose that even if you don't make so much money, at least you won't live your life in fear of the law knocking on your door and asking some questions which you might not really have answers to. So there's that as well. Just flipping the switch a bit, changing the direction a little bit. We're obviously a WordPress-based podcast, and WordPress is software. It sits on top of other software, and they in turn sit on computers which are sitting on the public internet, and it really is a recipe for things to go wrong if you think about it. But what is it? How should a typical normal WordPress user, so let's say somebody who is, when I say using WordPress, I mean more the audience of this podcast is people who are either implementers of WordPress or they are building WordPress websites, so they've got an agency or something like that. Where do you see the balance of being neurotic and being super protective and trying to install every conceivable way of preventing bad things happening, and the opposite, doing nothing at all and just hoping to God that nothing untoward happens? What do you see in towards the end of 2021 as a good position to be in? What kind of things would you be implementing for a WordPress website?
First of all, where things stand, I see a mix of both. I see a mix of people like, listen, I've installed 3 firewalls. How come my website is hacked? First of all, installing 1, 2, or 3 firewalls won't make a big difference. I'm like, stick to one, choose the best one. That's enough, And yes, there are people who don't do anything. Myself personally, I think what one can be ahead of 90% of the people out there is, first of all, I mean, don't get me wrong, security plugins are good and are useful because, I mean, quite frankly, we develop some ourselves. However, I think when you look at why websites are hacked, so for example, I was looking for some numbers before this podcast because, just out of curiosity. So on average, I've seen some statistics for example, from Forbes or PageStack or Sucuri. So there are at least 30k websites hacked every day. Yeah, a report from Sucuri from 2019 found that 47% of hacked websites have a backdoor, which means that once this website is fixed, that can be hacked again very, very easily. The hacker will still, the malicious hacker will still retain access to that website. But when you look at, regardless of how websites are hacked and regardless why websites are hacked, the biggest problem, I think, is always this, is user problems. As in, yes, one can say that, listen, plugin X has an amount of vulnerabilities, WordPress has an amount of vulnerabilities, yes, but quite frankly, if you keep everything up to date, you're already ahead of the curve. If you do the most basic tasks, like if you use a good solid password, if you use HTTPS at least for the admin area when you're logging in, if you don't use public Wi-Fi's, or if you cannot do any else, at least make sure you have a VPN. If you use a strong password, if you use at least, 2FA, don't share credentials, keep your software up to date. If you start with that, especially for the small websites, let's say if you're in a commerce store, if your website is growing, then of course you should invest a bit in security, and especially if you have a team working together on the same website, that's where security plugins come in. But if you have a small website, if you take care of the basic user best practices, as I said, strong password, use HTTPS, don't share your password, don't use Wi-Fi, even on your computer, because as we were saying, your computer can be used as a stepping stone. So yes, you can have the most secure website, you can have any type of security plugin installed, but if your computer is hacked, and there's a backdoor that you have a keylogger or whatever, and you're every day SSHing or accessing your website via FTP or accessing some files, your computer can be used as a stepping stone to hack your website. So, it's all about best practices. Use strong passwords, make sure your software is up to date, not just your website, even your computer. Make sure, don't click on suspicious links, or if you're suspicious, check or try. For example, if you're not sure, one simple trick, for example, some people say, but the email looked legitimate. I didn't know if it's exactly from our bank or no. If you just Google at least from whom the email is signed, like a phishing email, like from HSBC, for example, or some bank. If you search the title of the person who signed that email, if it's a phishing, most probably you'll find some information about it on Google. Other people reporting it as a phishing email. So if you're not sure, better not click. If you're not sure if the email is from your bank or whatever, or from whoever it is, call that organization. Listen, I got this email. Is it yours, or is it legitimate or no? So if you start with the best practices, you can be ahead of the curve, because WordPress by default, and most of the plugins you use, and plugins, I'm not talking about security, the plugins you normally use, if you keep them up to date, they will be fine. I mean, if there will be a security issue, and if the vendor, then of course, what plugins do you use? If the vendor, I mean, no software is 100% secure. No software in the world. Every software, somehow, if there's enough time for people, they will find issues in them. So what matters is this. When you choose a plugin, for example, make sure that if you're choosing a plugin, if this plugin had security issues in the past, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, every software will have vulnerabilities. What matters is this, that if when the vulnerability was reported, the vendor responded, and they fixed it, and they issued a patch. That's fine. The problem is when, of course, there were security issues reported and the vendor never reacted. I wouldn't use that plugin, But as long as you keep your software up to date and be careful what software to use and double check things or where to click, use a strong password, your website will do very well. You do very, very well.
Do you know, in terms of, again, WordPress freelancers or implementers or people who are just building out websites, do you know if, let's say, for example, I've built a website for a company, a local company, and I've deployed it to them, and maybe I've taken on the job of hosting things and so on. And then a few weeks after we've handed over and the money's been put into my bank account, their website is hacked. And we don't quite know how that's happened, but it has happened. There's clearly something wrong. There's images have been swapped and there's text that shouldn't be there. So something's up. Do you know, are there any laws, international or otherwise, it may be completely unique in each individual country, governing liability for this kind of thing? Does anybody ultimately, does the buck stop with anybody? Or how does that work? I mean, obviously, I'm talking in a situation where a client isn't on any kind of retainer with you, yet they're not on some kind of maintenance plan where you promise to keep things up to date. Does a client ever have any comeback and saying, well, hang on a minute, you provided me with this thing, this product, it's been broken, that's on you?
I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I know, there are no laws. I know there have been talks with some governments about trying to better understand the dynamics of how these things work, but there are no laws. What I know is nowadays there are insurances for both vendors and the end user. As in as you said, if you are an agency, there are insurances for agencies. So just in case the users, there's also insurances for security companies. So like you can say, listen, I tested your website and it's according to me as of today it's 100% secure. And there are these type of insurances, but I don't think legally there is anything yet, any framework for these type of things. And in a way, it's very difficult because, as you know, first of all, security is not something that kind of it's not a one-time fix, So even if I gave you the website today, and let's say I'm the best security expert in the world, and I can confirm that your website is 100% secure, but I can confirm that today it is 100% secure. Tomorrow, things might change,
Yeah.
Then of course, on top of that, there's the other factor. I gave you the website and you started using it.
That's right,
and do I know if you gave your password? You used a notepad, and you write your password on a notepad, or you sent it to some? I don't know, So I think it's a very it's a very difficult situation.
I sort of often make the analogy that it's a bit like if you purchase a car from a garage. You can't really go back to the garage and say, look, you sold me this car and somebody crashed into me. I'd really like you to repair my car. It's well, in a sense, yeah, well, that would be lovely if we could do that, but we didn't actually have anything to do with the car getting crashed into. Did you take out any insurance? No, I didn't, I'm afraid. Well, there you go. So it feels like the insurance route is good. However, this links nicely to something that you guys actually do, which is your logging software, which will actually provide you a trail of evidence to see if actually the responsibility does lie with the client. And I'm guessing that that's something that you would advocate, is stick something in there which has got comprehensive logs to figure out and be able to rewind the history of the whole website and see where things began to go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, yeah, that's one of the most common questions we get in support and pre-sale. Sorry, I hired this developer, or I hired X or Y, and yeah, he or she or whatever, they did again, X or Y, but we don't know who or what or why. So yes, logs are definitely one of the kind of like holy grails for security. It's something where that will help you a lot. Definitely, that's for sure.
These days, and with plugins like yours, you literally can log more or less everything that could ever be of importance. And have, whilst it might take you a while to sift through those logs and figure out who did what and when and where, that could potentially save your bacon.
Yes, in fact, one thing we also recommend, by the way, when you talk about logs, there's for example something like our plugin WP Activity Log, which keeps a log of what's happening on WordPress. However, WordPress, it's important to keep in mind that WordPress is also running on a web server, and there's also a MySQL server. There's all these pieces. So when we talk about logs, you should take a holistic approach. And if something really happens, something really bad, you can use the WP Activity Logs for what happened on WordPress. However, you should, if let's say your website was hacked and you use a dedicated server, you should also look at the web server logs. You should also look at the database server logs. If you have other services, I don't know, like SSH, SFTP and stuff, you should look at all the logs and try to build that picture about and try to understand what happened. So, but yes, logs, as I said, they're kind of like insurance. Nobody likes them, but when you need them, you want them to be there.
Yeah, it's like insurance is just one of those things. I'll tell you a true story. This is absolutely true. I've been with, there's this motoring organisation in the UK called the AA, and the AA will come if your car breaks down. They will come to the roadside within an hour or so, no matter where you are in the country, and they'll basically fix your car. I've been subscribing to the AA for pretty close to 15 years. And I've never, ever used them. Not one time did I phone them up to say, I'm stuck, I've got a crisis. And I stopped using them. And exactly 12 days later, my car broke down.
Yeah, these things happen even with the insurances.
It's ridiculous, though. I mean, you couldn't make it up. I remember just thinking, my car's fine, there's no problem. And then the handbrake cable snapped and I was stuck. Like, I couldn't get my car to come out of having the brake on. I just thought, do you know what? That it's costing me so much more than it would have done probably for like 4 years worth of subscription to the AA. So yes, I totally get the analogy. Do you guys and the suite of plugins that you offer, which we'll link to in the show notes, by the way, do you offer sort of remediation services? Do you offer any sort of, okay, it's all gone wrong, the proverbial has hit the fan? Do you offer like, okay, we'll fix it for you, or is that out of your remit?
No, it's out of our remit. We just develop and sell the plugins. Having said that, I mean, if someone, first of all, as everyone knows, every WordPress website is different because of the number of plugins and themes that you are using. I mean, every website is different than the other. So you don't depends where it's hosted, depends what users, and that's why I said like if it was purely, for example, I don't know, a hack in WordPress itself, you can find out roughly from our plugin from the logs of our plugin what happened. However, if it was something else, I don't know, maybe it was the website was on a shared hosting, someone hacked another website, they got a privilege escalation, and they hacked through it's very difficult. So you need to take a look at all the logs. However, if usually it's not the first time someone sends us a question like, listen, we have your plugin, this has happened, can you please tell us, and we usually we do through support give them, okay, like check if you're seeing these type of events, or check if you're seeing this type of activity. So we do give pointers, but we do not, because as I said, like WordPress, it's a simple system, but when you look at it technically, it can be a very complex system because there are many, it runs on a number of components. So you need to, when something is hacked, you need to find out exactly what happened and from where. And quite frankly, most of the time it happens in WordPress, but quite often as well it happens, I don't know, from the web server or from another service that is running on your web server or from a website which is running on the same web server as yours. So it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But if someone asks, of course, we're more than happy. We don't do the service ourselves, but if someone asks, listen, this happened, or listen, I'm suspecting this, what should I look for in the activity logs? Then of course we do give general tips and instructions like, okay, you should be looking for this, or you are expected to see these type of logs in the activity log.
If somebody because we are closing in on our allotted time here, if somebody's interest has been piqued by what we've been talking about. You know, you're just curious about how internet security works and why people are hacking things and how those things can be mitigated against and what kind of solutions you might want to implement in your own business to protect your clients as well as you. What are your favoured resources online? I mean, feel free to mention any of your own if you've got your own blog that you want to talk about, but also any good resources that you find yourself frequently looking at that we can write down in our show notes.
Yeah, of course we have our own blog, and the reason why I mentioned our own blog because we are, especially the last year or so, we invested a lot in content, but we are writing a lot generic tips like security, website administration, website and user management. You know, like we even write, for example, we even have posts about DNS, you know, or about how to manage user or how to do this. So it's not. Honestly, like you'll see, of course, I mean, there will be our plugins, a shout out to our plugins on some posts, but we when we are writing, we are purely we want this blog to be an educational blog. So we have our blog, which is wpwhitesecurity.com. There are quite a few blogs which are interesting in the WordPress. There's the Sukuru blog was always interesting. They have the normal articles, but they also have, if you are interested in more in the technical aspect, how a particular malware works or what happened and how that hack works. The security blogs usually, when they find a new hack or something, they write about it in technical detail. That's very interesting. So if you'd like to kind of start learning a bit more about WordPress security, it's definitely a place you should keep an eye on. There's of course the wpscan.com website from Ryan Dewhurst. They, apart from having the database of vulnerabilities, they do post the occasional like blog posts about these things as well, about what security best practices and hacks. There's also PatchStack, patchstack.com, which used to be another security company. Yeah, WebArcs. Yeah, they do also have some interesting on the technical side content as well. So there are quite a few actually. I don't have any particular favorite one. I just like I follow quite a good number and I just sift through my mailbox. In fact, to be honest, I just subscribe mostly to be able to receive an email when there are new blog posts, and then of course I just sift through my mailbox and see what is interesting. But yeah. To me, those are like the top 4 in the industry for sure.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. Thank you. And if people off the back of this podcast wanted to make contact with you personally, or indeed just reach out and look at your website, what's the best domain, Twitter handle, email address, whichever way you want to get people speaking to you? What works best there?
Yeah, the website is wpwhitesecurity.com. One word. And Twitter is Robert Abela. Robert and surname Abela is Abela. One word, Robert Abela. They can always DM me there. Yeah.
So RobertAbela is your @ sign on Twitter. Okay. Well, that's been really fascinating. Honestly, I reckon I've probably gone through about a half of what I wanted to ask, but time has got the better of us. Maybe there's another episode in us in a few more years' time. But for now, Robert, I really appreciate you talking to us today. Hopefully that's been of interest and educational to the listeners. I really appreciate you chatting to us.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, let's schedule another one, hopefully sometime next year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that. Very nice to chat with Robert Abela today, all about WordPress security and security more generally. If you have anything to add to that, any commentary, please head over to wpbuilds.com and find the episode. It's number 266, and give us a comment there. Alternatively, head over to our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and again, search for episode 266, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll be back next Thursday when we'll be doing another podcast episode, only that will be a conversation between David Wormsley and myself in our WordPress Business Bootcamp series. In a couple of weeks, we'll have another interview, and don't forget, every Monday, 2 p.m. UK time, wpbuilds.com/live for our This Week in WordPress show. Okay, that's it for this week. I'm going to fade in some cheesy music and say bye-bye for now.